Hey there, you're back. I hope you really enjoyed the first part of this course. So I hope that you could measure some acceleration and you could also analyze it well on Python. Today we'll actually measure our first physiological parameter. I'm talking here about measuring ECG today. We'll first learn how to set up the system with the microcontroller and all the cables. And afterwards, we will learn how to have a look at this data actually live in something called the serial plotter. And then afterwards, we'll learn how to collect the data, save the data, and in a later video, we will also talk about how we can analyze the data in Python. Let's go. Let's first talk about what we need for our setup today. First of all, like always, we need our microcontroller. Second of all, we need the EMG detector. I know I said EMG detector, but since EMG and ECG both measure electrical activity, we can also use that to measure the electrical activity of our heart, and you'll see later that this will work. Then we also need 3 jumper wires. Those are those here. We need the cable that connects directly with the EMG detector. And also at this point, I should mention that I'll probably in this video use the word EMG detector and ECG detector interlaced, but it's always this device here. And then we need our connection to the EMG detector with, on the other side, the connection to the electrodes. And obviously, we then need the electrodes to connect to our body. And for you, those electrodes might look a little bit different, but that doesn't matter as long as they have this part here where you can connect to the cable. So you basically can like click them in here. Before I'll show you how you can put together all the components of the system, and before we can start to measure anything, we need to figure out where to put the electrodes on our body to being able to measure the ECG. So as you can see, I just put on the electrodes already. So the first electrode is at the manubrium, which is the very top part of the sternum. The second electrode is at the left ECG placement, which is in the 5th intercostal space, which is between the 5th and the 6th rib at the mid-axillary line here. So I'll put a video in the description here, where a person will show you how to put on a 12-lead ECG. And in his 12-lead ECG, he'll explain how you get from one placement to the other, and he'll also explain where to put the V6 electrode, and you'll learn how to better find this position. And the third electrode needs to be at a very bony part of the body because this is the reference electrode and we want to have as less electrical activity as possible. So this can either be at the C7 in our neck, or for the resting experiment where you lie, the malleolus of your ankle is a very good position. So the malleolus is this very bony part of your ankle, and I usually put it on the right one, but it doesn't matter if right or left. Before we put on the electrodes, we need to get a good connection between the electrode and the body. So one thing that you guys need to do is, if you have if your body is hairy at the part where you want to put the electrode, you need to shave off those hairs. And secondly, you should take an alcohol wipe and rub off the top part of your skin, or just like rub it a little bit, so to clean the skin a little bit more, to even get a better connection between the electrode and the body. So now we can talk about where to connect the 3 cables with our electrodes. So first of all, the white one goes to the one at the manubrium. So you can actually now see how I click it on. The red one will be the one that you'll connect with the V6 placement, so on the left side of your ribs. And the black one will be the one for the reference electrode, which will be the one depending on where you have the reference electrode, either on the C7 in your neck, or if you're doing the resting experiment, then on the malleolus of your ankle. And the last thing that we want to do is to fix the cable close to the electrode with all the 3 electrodes. So for this, we need a skin-friendly tape. And then what we basically want to do is, I'll show you that here. So you basically want to take the cable and take out a little bit of the pull. So you basically try to do it like this way. So if you're moving, like it won't pull or push onto the electrode, so that there is enough loose cable between the tape and the electrode. Okay, so now we can talk about how we put together all the components of our setup. So first, we can take the EMG or ECG detector and just connect the audio jack to it, okay? That's the one end. Then on the other end of the EMG detector, we take this cable here, and it doesn't matter if we take this side or this side, and connect it in here. Then we can take the 3 jumper wires. So it doesn't matter which color you take, they all have the same purpose. But I just took yellow, red, and black because we want to connect them to yellow, red, and black here, and just a little bit easier for the overview, or like, yeah, to see the system better. So now we can connect the yellow cable to the yellow output here, the red cable to the red output, and the black to the black one. Okay, and then the next step will be to connect these cables to the microcontroller. So the black cable is going to be for our reference electrode. So the black one we have to put in here. We can come closer here, Opala. Come a little bit closer here. So the black cable goes into ground here, and ground is GND over here. That's our ground, one of those two, doesn't matter. Then the yellow is V out. So that's where we will measure, that is where we will measure our electrical signal. So this one, and you'll understand later why, we'll put into A0. So the A0s are, so that the A inputs are to measure analog signal, whereas all the other ones, like just the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, are to measure digital signals. And since the EMG detector gives us an electrical signal, we need, well, this is analog, we need to put into A0. And then the red one will be to give us power. So we need to connect this here to the 3.3 volt. So this provides the EMG detector with the power. So here you can see it a little bit better now. And then lastly, we can connect our microcontroller with our computer with the USB cable. So now we're connected with our Arduino, and I shared my screen, and now I'll show you the code that we need to measure our electrical signal. So first, we can use an automatic example that Arduino provides us. And since we're measuring an analog signal, I'll show you which one that is. So we go to File, then Examples, and then Basics. And here we got something called analog read signal. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to measure an analog signal from the EMG or ECG detector. What does this code do? So this code basically opens the connection to the serial monitor. So again, we need to be careful to always have a baud rate of 9600 once we open the serial monitor. And then it basically analog reads the signal from the A0 pin. So that's why we had to connect the yellow cable to the A0 pin, because that's where we're going to read the data from. And then it will print the value that it's measuring from the A0 pin, from the ECG or EMG detector to the serial monitor. So if we upload this data now to our microcontroller, and again, we have an arrow. This is because it doesn't know which USB port it should use. So like, again, here we want to have this Arduino Uno, or for some people we'll say Arduino Uno / Arduino Genuino. And then for the port, you need to find the right port where your microcontroller is connected. And for me, that's usually this one. Let's try it again. Upload. There we go. It's uploading now. And that's it. So if we open this now, we should see if our baud rate, that's wrong right now. We need to change the baud rate to 9600. We should see a data flow now. There we go. So that's how it looks like when we have everything connected, and this value is our electrical activity. But I'm gonna show you something even cooler now. So if we go to Tools and Serial Plotter, and we have the right baud rate here, and we wait for a little bit, there we go. We can see the live heartbeat of my connected electrodes and of my heart. One thing that we've figured out while trying out this system is that the data looks a little bit different, whether it is connected with the power or not, and also whether you're touching your computer with your hands or not. There's one thing that I forgot to mention before. So if I disconnect my microcontroller now, you can't see this because I forgot to talk about this. So I'm adding this video afterwards to this tutorial. So if you disconnect I just disconnected the USB cable from the microcontroller, which makes a data flow stop, which makes this thing, the serial plotter here, stop too. So one thing that is very important that you wanna check here is when you turn on the serial plotter, you wanna make sure that the R wave, so this part here, is very distinctive from the rest of the data. So you want this peak here to be way higher than the rest of the data, especially way higher than, for example, the T wave here. If the T wave gets higher and like the difference of heights between the R wave and the T wave, so this guy here and this one here, the difference is not very high anymore, it will get way harder afterwards to post-analyze the data in Python, where we want to find where we want to find exactly those R wave peaks, so that we can afterwards calculate the heart rate and afterwards the heart rate variability. If this one isn't very distinctive, and if that's not very distinctive, what you can try is to change the position of your electrodes a little bit to get a better signal. And then you try it again in the serial plotter, and once you're at a signal that looks similar to this one, then you can go on with the data collection. Let's now open Lab2 Code 1 and check out what this code is doing. This code is very similar to what we've seen before, with the only difference being that here we have a set sampling frequency. Before, at the analog read serial code, it basically just gave us the information as fast as possible. Also with the baud rate of 9600. So if you increase the baud rate, it will also give you the data faster and more samples per millisecond and so on. In this code, we actually can define our sampling frequency, and the code will then always give you one data point per whatever sampling frequency or per sample for the given sampling frequency. So here, for example, I have a sampling frequency of 8000, which is a good rate that we can use for our resting experiment later. And then it calculates from the sampling frequency, it calculates the time constant, which it later needs here. So it basically always looks once this time constant has passed, and in our case, this is every millisecond. So once 1 millisecond has passed, it does the same as before. It measures the value from the ECG or EMG detector, and then it prints this value, and it also prints the millisecond when it happened, so that we also have a timing of when each sample happened. Also, a difference here is that we changed the baud rate. 9600 is not fast enough anymore to send all this data within every single millisecond. So with a baud rate of 500,000, this works better. So that's why we changed it as well, which means that as soon as you open the serial plotter or serial monitor, you need to be careful to change this baud rate. So let's upload the code here. See if that works. It's blinking, it's done uploading. So first of all, we can open our serial monitor, change the baud rate here to 500,000 and see what happens there. There we go. So the first column is again our ECG data, and the second column now is the time in milliseconds. If we now want to see how this looks like at the serial plotter, if we open the serial plotter and the baud rate is already right, that doesn't work because now it's trying to plot the time. So it tries to plot both columns that we're printing. So it plots on the one hand the ECG value, but on the other hand also the time. And since the time is like rising all the time, we cannot see anything of the ECG data anymore because the value of time gets so high that the y-axis has to get bigger and bigger, and that doesn't really show you anything anymore. If you want to see just the ECG data with this code, what you can do is you can just say comment this part here. So if you comment this here, then you don't have the time anymore. So let's upload it. We don't have the time here. It's done uploading. So if you open a serial monitor on the one hand, it's just going to be the one column again as before. And now if you open the serial plotter, it should look like it did before. So there we go. That's our heartbeat. Let's close this again and uncomment this part here. And now upload it again. So now for the resting experiment, what you want to do is you want to put in your electrodes. You want to go to a couch or a bed where it's quiet and where you can relax for 10 minutes, a little bit over 10 minutes. And you can set a timer for 10 minutes, then start the serial monitor, and then you just lie back and you basically just wait until the timer goes off. So you're just waiting until the time is over. And then once you're done with the experiment, like once the timer goes off, you can basically just go here and you just disconnect your microcontroller. And then it stops here. You can copy it. And as before, text edit, as we did in the accelerometer part of this course, we just open a new document, a new text document. We copy and paste it. In this case, as I explained you guys also in the videos before, for the MacBook, you also want to make it a plain text, and then you can save this file, and that's going to be the file that we'll use later for the Python analysis. Let's now talk about how we can use this system and make it wireless so that we can save or store the data on the microSD. And then we can also talk a little bit about the exercise experiment that we'll do as a second experiment in this lab. So first of all, we need to open Lab2 Code 2. So for this part, to make it wirelessly and log stuff onto the microSD and not being connected to the computer anymore, we need a few more things. First of all, we need the quick table with the open log. So that's our connection with the microSD. And then we also need our battery holder with the battery to power the whole system. Let's talk about the code here for a little bit. First of all, we're doing the same as we did before. We're measuring the ECG value that we get from the ECG or EMG detector. And afterwards, instead of logging the data, so the ECG value and the time of when it was logged, instead of sending this to the serial monitor, as we did before, we're now logging it on the microSD with the mylog. Here, we also don't have a sampling frequency as we have before. And the reason for this is that when we send the data to the serial monitor, we can send data really, really fast. Compared to this with the microSD, unfortunately, logging the data on the microSD is not as fast, so the code loses a lot of speed. So I've tested this before, and with the serial monitor, as you've seen, we can do sampling frequencies of 1000 Hertz, of 500 Hertz. If the baud rate is high enough, this works. With the microSD, I got a sampling frequency. If I let it work as fast as possible, I got a sampling frequency of about 66 Hertz. So since this doesn't have a set sampling frequency, each sample has a different frequency. So it's usually around 66 Hertz. It can be a little bit faster, like 70 Hertz, or a little bit lower than 50 Hertz or something like that. But because we want it to be as fast as possible anyways, we do not set a sampling frequency here. And the rest is basically what we learned in the lab before. So we include the libraries that we have talked about before. We give the name where it logs the data, the text file where it logs on the microSD, we give this a name, and then we start the different connections And that's basically it with the code. Let's now connect our system here. So first we can put our microSD in the open log. Then we can connect the open log with the microSD via the quick connection, put in here. And that's basically it for the beginning. Also, we still have our ECG system connected to the microcontroller. So if we connect now the USB cable to our microcontroller, we can upload this code to the microcontroller. So let's upload it here. There we go. So now we can disconnect it. And if you now want to use the system somewhere outside or where you're not directly at the computer, you just need to connect it now or power it now with the battery here. And as soon as you connect it, it will immediately start with the data collection. So you can always check if it's working. On the one hand, the red light here needs to light up so that you have, then you know at the open log, the red light shows you that you have power, and the green light shows you that it's logging data to the microSD. So I can see a very light green light here, which means that it's logging the data really, really fast to the open log. So once you're done with the data collection, to stop it, you just need to disconnect the battery, and then you can take the microSD and connect it to the computer. And now we can open the file on the microSD. Here we go, that's the file. So in the left column here, we have the ECG signal, and in the right column, we have the time in milliseconds. Let's for a moment talk about the exercise experiment as well. So for the resting experiment, I already told you, you will use the computer system and you will lie down. You'll have the reference electrode on your malleolus and you'll collect the data with the serial monitor. For the exercise experiment, you can you should probably put your reference electrode onto your C7 in the neck. The reason for this is because we want to do cycling, and if you have it on the ankle, the foot is moving all the time and the cables will shake a lot, which will give you a lot of noise in the data. This is also the second point that I'd like to talk with you. So for the cycling experiment, you can either go outside with on a road bike with the microSD system, or you can still go on a stationary bike with either the microSD system or still connected to the computer. What will be really, really important here is that you fix your cables a lot on your body, and then also maybe somewhere on the bike or something like that, so that when you're moving, the cables are almost not shaking at all. So you really want to reduce the shaking of the cables, because if they shake too much, you'll have a lot of noise, you'll have a lot of movement artifacts in the data, and it will be harder to afterwards analyze this data. I guess especially when you go on the road bike, you really want to try to keep your upper body still while you're cycling, and as well really fix all the cables from your body down to the microcontroller. With this, we're done with the lab for today. So today we've learned how to set up the microcontroller with the ECG system, how to collect the ECG data, to how to see the heartbeat live on the serial monitor. And afterwards, we've also talked a little bit about how we can collect this data with the micro SD. And I guess that's it, that's all that you will need for this part of the course. I hope you'll have a lot of fun with it, and see you guys soon. Bye-bye.